movie focused on notorious director Quentin Tarantino. He has 12 directorial movies under his belt, but
I don't know why you keep saying 12. It is not 12.
It's basically 10 movies. Because two of them
only 10, but the Kill Bills are 1.
Sure. Yeah.
This is very important because he's going to retire after only making 10 movies for some stupid reason that boxers are only good for so long and making films is like boxing.
Anyway, it doesn't make any sense because he was involved in Death Proof and a whole bunch of other movies, but then, yeah, Kill Bill 1, Kill Bill 2, which count as one movie technically, but are 2 movies, so yeah. It's not really 10, but it's 10. Sure. Yeah, do you want to give like a bit of a backstory with him, I guess?
Yeah, so Quentin Tarantino is he's a really popular director, probably the most popular director of his generation. So he started he's a guy from California, like he's from just outside LA, or like, you know, not in the heart of the city, but he's in LA. So he's always been obsessed with movies. His movies kind of helped jumpstart part of the like American independent movement in the early 90s. So alongside people like Robert Rodriguez and Steven Soderbergh, who came a little before, they sort of founded a new type of independent movie, which would obviously grow for him into bigger and bigger budgets. His stuff is all very well known at this point. He's received tons of accolades. He's won Oscars, both for writing. As a director, his movies are completely unique to him. Like, you can immediately tell they're his movies, both through his use of language and long bits of dialogue. Just in listening to him speak, and also the fact that he's in several of his own movies, you get a sense of how he talks, and that voice is present throughout all his films. Like, it is oftentimes indistinguishable from something that he would be saying for what a character is saying instead. Hallmarks of his work include non-linear narratives, so his movies are often not going to just be A, B, C events occurring. They'll jump around in time. We'll get into that with each sort of specific movie, but there is excessive violence in every single film. There are often transgressive themes, be that violence against women, prolific use of racist language or just racial slurs. Yeah, I think that
his use of tension also is definitely like his own style, I would say. Like, when you're watching it, you can clearly tell something bad is about to happen, and then it does. And oftentimes in ways that catch you off guard and that you were not quite expecting, but you knew something was going to happen. If you've seen enough movies, you can tell when the thing is about to snap or whatever.
Yeah, suspense builds and almost always ends in dramatic, over-the-top violence. He deals mostly in genre films, so he clearly loves the crime genre, which he's done repeatedly. Made a war movie, couple of westerns. The Kill Bill movies are martial arts movies. And his main goal in working sort of in genre films rather than just making more generic dramas, which is someone of his stature as a director who's pretty much just given blank checks to make whatever he wants, is rare. But he always tries to deliver on the genre. So he'll make sure that everything he views as being integral elements of these types of movies is present, while he also sort of deconstructs the genre throughout and then builds it back up in a way to sort of transcend it. He's a really, really talented filmmaker, and has chosen to make predominantly very schlocky movies that tend to be artful at best, and at worst get a little masturbatory, a little long. Those issues are a little more weighted towards his newer stuff, which feels like it probably could have required some editing down in a writer's room, but due to his immense popularity and success, he doesn't really need to edit it down because people love what he's doing.
Yeah, he's someone that people who are familiar with movies love and adore, and people who are familiar with movies also will look down their noses at as well. By saying he's a guy who's really popular, but is kind of like shticky. Like he has his like shticks, and he just does those well, and it's not really film. It is how I would say like some people feel about Tarantino. Yeah, I just wanted to comment that a lot of people enjoy his movies, and then there are certainly camps out there who like, well, actually, I didn't really enjoy that because of like one or two things in the movie that throw them for a loop. But he's definitely irreverent, in a lot of ways. When asked why something is in a movie, he will usually get very upset and not explain why, and then turn the question back onto the interviewer, which is usually very funny.
Yeah, there's that great interview of him after Kill Bill came out in like 2004 or something, where he's repeatedly asked like, Quentin, why so much violence? Why are you doing this to us? And he'd done these interviews so frequently that this lady asks, like, do they really need to be that violent? Why are you doing this? And he's just like, because it's fun, Jan! And he's just screaming, he's just rocking back and forth, animated, like, no, we gotta cut people up. There's gotta be gunshots and blood. And, I think he's right. His movies are a lot of fun.
Yes.
We'll get into some of the more controversial stuff, I think, later. I don't know that we'll necessarily delve into it per movie. Most particularly his endless use of the N-word, not only by many of his characters but by him himself, is definitely people have some issues with that today. So we'll get into that stuff. But yeah, he's just as a guy who like operates so heavily like through pastiche and homage, he's able to just blend them so well together with subtext, where characters are basically not talking about the story anymore. They're not talking about the plot. They're just seemingly talking about nothing at random. And that's where Tarantino seems to build meaning from his movies, is day-to-day interactions of characters that reveal something deeper about them and why they're doing what they're doing, which is always the sign of a great screenwriter.
Yeah, his dialogue is super enjoyable, punchy, and realistic as well as wild, I would say. Yeah, so his first, or at least the first movie that we're going to focus on, Reservoir Dogs, came out in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, I guess, 8 gangsters or eight guys, and each of them has the name of a color. So there's like Mr. Blue, Mr. Yellow, I forget what the other one's, Mr. Green, Mr. Pink.
Mr. Brown, Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, and Mr. Pink. And then there's Joe is the leader, and then his son is like nice guy, Eddie.
Yes.
All-star cast: Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Steve Buscemi, Michael Marsden, Lawrence Tierney, Chris Penn. Yeah, the cast in this movie is pretty great.
I like this movie. I enjoy it. I think I liked it a lot more the first few times I watched it. It sort of lost its luster the more times I've seen it, but especially it being his first movie, as well as Yeah, just the combination that he puts in it is pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah, it's wonderfully written. It's a great script. The dialogue, like you said, is punchy. It flows really nicely. The story itself jumps all over the place. So, I mean, these guys commit a heist. They steal a bunch of diamonds, but you never see the heist. You see a little bit of the aftermath right after, but mostly it's just some people in one room who are paranoid because they think that they got set up, and that's why their heist didn't go well. Um, and then things play out from there. Overall, I think I agree with you. Like it's one of those things where his directorial choices show flashes of brilliance, and the movie is very iconic. Like just a bunch of dudes in black suits with the sunglasses. Like there's something inherently cool about it. The musical choice helps with that too. So just some combination of his character work, the actual pacing of dialogue, the costume design, his direction choices, and the editing kind of made this like a cult hit immediately. And it's definitely only grown in popularity as time has gone on and has been endlessly copied and spoofed and beloved.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the iconic suits and the sunglasses. I forget where I was reading. This was a few years ago. It was talking about like Ray-Ban sales and how like Ray-Bans were like not on their way out, but they like weren't really sure where to go as a product line. And then after this movie and like obviously like other movies kind of similar to it, just the Wayfarer sunglasses just like took off from just like seeing these men in suits with guns being gangsters and walking around committing crimes and being cool looking covered in blood, cheese and saying like just really wild shit. Yeah. Slow-mo scenes of them walking in dirty alleys gets the people going, got the sales. So yeah, to this day, I think Wayfarers owes a huge thank you to this movie and obviously subsequent films. Um, there's a really strong exemplar of juxtaposition in this movie as well that I just wanted to highlight. Like the scene stuck in the middle with you is played over top of like a torture scene, basically.
A brutal scene.
Yeah, it's really brutal. So if you haven't seen it, I won't ruin it for you, but yeah, it's brutal, which is absolutely Tarantino style, which is just it just comes right out of nowhere. Like it builds up towards it and then yeah, he goes all in on it. Um what else was I gonna say? Oh, there is the scene where they're Buscemi's on the ground and Keitel is above him and they both have the guns like pointed at each other, which is straight up ripped off of what movie is that? Is it a John Woo film?
Yeah, yeah. For a Better Tomorrow.
Yeah, A Better Tomorrow, yeah.
I think that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah, crazy Mexican standoff at the end.
Yeah. Um so we didn't mention this, but Tarantino is like a super into like samurai films, and I would say specifically well I wouldn't cite specific movies, but he clearly like I don't want to say did his homework, but he is a very much he's a director that is really into cinema and
He's
has
a noted cinephile.
basically like has a running history of scenes in his head, the movies that they come from and directors, and could like cite them as a um yeah, an encyclopedia of film.
Which he steals from wholesale.
Yes. Yes.
Um, pretty
Uh,
similarly to Wes Anderson.
yes. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, is kind of yeah, we don't really know. But
Conscious. No, he's consciously stealing them.
yeah, I wanted to mention that not necessarily as a knock on him, but because he has consumed so much that he like has it in his head and
The-
understands what he's doing. But yeah,
The one he's never been able to get away from is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He's an avowed fan of spaghetti westerns more than anything, and I think that movie alone is like a blueprint for him in terms of tone that he's always going for. He doesn't have any movies with real heroes. Like his heroes are all very gray. All of them are willing to commit atrocities and acts of violence in pursuit of whatever their goal is. They're always darkly, darkly funny, but they are very funny. But they know when to get serious with crazy shit like this one, which just has the brutal torture and eventual murder of a policeman.
yeah. So you find yourself rooting for people in the movies, and then they do something, and you go, oh, I guess I'm still rooting for them, but I'm not sure. So yeah, that is definitely part of his style as well. Is he makes you both root for people, but then also like something happens and you're like, well then.
Yeah, yeah. This one, this movie in particular is so much more humble than the rest of his. Like his confidence is there, but it's not full blown. So I think for the rest of his filmography, he was doing whatever he wanted, both in terms of writing and directing. Whereas this one is so much more focused. It feels more theatrical, more play-like than cinematic in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Just by the nature of the majority of the movie being in one location, where there are a lot of flashbacks put in of some of the gangsters, like what they were doing before, or the one gangster is a cop in disguise. And so there's some stuff of like how he prepped to go undercover.
It does feel like though a lot of scenes they're just like enter stage right, and then the scene like happens.
Yeah, yeah. So that's even though there are flourishes of directorial brilliance. So that would be like some of the action scenes that are cut in as flashbacks around the actual heist. Some of those are really good. Just in terms of like some kind of frenetic energy. The scenes with Michael Madsen's character, Mr. Blonde, who's just the psychopath who tortures the man and cuts off his ear and prepares to light him on fire. All that stuff's great, but I do think a lot of the general construction of the movie from a directorial standpoint is amateurish. And that's why it feels kind of like a play.
Yes.
And this is an issue that'll creep up again, because in more ways than one, Hateful Eight is very similar to this. Because Hateful Eight spends like 2 hours with just a bunch of characters locked in a cabin and they don't know who to trust. But yeah, we'll get to that eventually. I don't know if you have too much else to say about this one. I do really still like this movie. It's pretty fun to rewatch, but that torture scene is tough. It is really, really well made because it's just disturbing.
Yeah, when I say it's a very strong exemplar of juxtaposition, like I wouldn't cite it for my students, but I would cite it and just tell you like it's stuck in the middle with you and then a man who's would rather die basically than have what's happening to him. Speaking of which, Pulp Fiction comes out in 1994. This
happy, friendly family movie.
Yeah. All-star cast, even more of an all-star cast than the previous movie. You've got John Travolta, Uma Thurman, Samuel L. Jackson, Harvey Keitel once again. Who else have we got? Bruce Willis. Yeah, just a bunch of big names. Ving Rhames. My God. Yeah, this movie is probably his most well known, or what he's most known for, other than like Inglourious Bastards, as of now. But yeah, this movie it has the iconic like unserialized or synchronatic. I can't use words right now. The timing is all chopped up and like sort of like spooled out differently for you. So yeah, upon rewatches, you kind of start to really understand what the movie is both going for, but then also when things happen in time. Like I would say it's pretty difficult to understand the first time you watch it when things happen. Yeah, a movie full of violence. There's a pretty aggressive rape scene that happens as well, which then results in subsequent violence. Drugs. It's a bit all over the place, but from a directorial standpoint, it is pretty damn incredible. a lot of the decisions made, from the music to the casting, but as well as like where the characters are supposed to be going and what they're supposed to be doing in each scene. Plus having John Travolta as that character, I think, is just like incredible.
Yeah, so that was another thing I forgot to mention is what Tarantino has also become known for is either revitalizing certain careers of semi-has-been actors or using actors who have traditionally been one way as something completely different, where he's just decided in his knowledge of a million movies, he's like, that one should have gone like that. That actor never should have played that. He always should have done. So for this movie, it was John Travolta. His career was in the shitter. He wasn't the first choice to play the character. It was actually supposed to be Michael Madsen. And Michael Madsen was busy doing another movie. And so Harvey Weinstein, who was the producer of all of Tarantino's movies except for his last one, which we'll get into later. Just in case you haven't heard, Harvey Weinstein is a bit of a controversial fellow. But Harvey Weinstein wanted Daniel Day-Lewis to be in the part.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but Tarantino was like, no, let's do John Travolta, and it gave him a Oscar nomination and helped sort of save his career before it nosedived again later. But
right. Just as a side note, I apologize. Tim Roth also is in the movie. I seemingly always forget Tim Roth for some reason.
Yeah, so basically the movie has a prologue and an epilogue, which involve Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer playing a pair of sort of Bonnie and Clyde thieves who decide to rob a breakfast store. But while they're preparing, like the prologue is basically they're gonna rob it, and then they start robbing it, and it jumps into the movie with just this sweeping musical to, you know, the song, the surfing song.
The surfer song, yeah.
Yeah. Which is just such a badass opening scene. But the epilogue then is you see the resolution of their attempt to rob this place because, unfortunately for them, two of the other main characters in the movie, Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta, are in the diner. And what you've learned through the movie already is that these guys are crazy murdering lunatics.
They do not fuck around at
particularly all. Samuel L. Jackson's portrayal as Jules Winfield, who quotes a certain now infamous Bible verse. So yeah, they get into that, but that's kind of like the prologue and the epilogue, and in between there are three other stories. So there's the Vincent Vega with Marcellus's wife, which is Uma Thurman and John Travolta have a weird night out, which involves a lot of John Travolta doing heroin, and then they go dancing and eat dinner. Lots of conversation about pop culture and nonsense bullshittery. And then she overdoses on heroin and shit gets crazy, and then that wraps that up. The Gold Watch is the next one, which actually was specifically not written by Quentin Tarantino. So
Christopher Walken just bursts into the movie.
Yeah. So this movie won the Oscar for best writing, best original screenplay. But Tarantino did not win it alone because he did not write it alone. One of his best friends named Roger Avery wrote it with him. And from everything I can tell researching the movie, I believe Roger Avery specifically wrote The Gold Watch, which is a story about Bruce Willis plays a fighter who is told by Ving Rhames to throw a boxing match, and instead he decides to kill the other guy, bet against that other guy in a fixed match, win big, and then leave LA. But as he's trying to leave LA, he literally his girlfriend forgets his gold watch, which we learn is important because there's a whole flashback scene, like you said, where Christopher Walken explains in excruciating detail about a generational line of men putting the watch in their asshole in prisoner of war camps. And so this asshole watch is critically important to Bruce Willis. So he has to go home knowing his home is going to be watched or guarded by gangsters to retrieve the watch. So he gets the watch. Unfortunately, the home is being guarded by John Travolta, who he kills, even though we've already that's where the chronology of the movie starts to mess with you the first time you've seen it, because he's still kind of alive in the movie and he'll be alive again.
He's alive at the end of the movie, which is not the end of the story, but the end of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the gold watch is chronologically the end of the movie.
Well done.
But then
Chronicle.
Bruce Willis leaves and runs into Ving Rhames on the street, who just has a box of donuts. They get into a gunfight. Bruce Willis crashes his car. They eventually end up in a pawn shop, which turns out to be a gay rape dungeon run by Confederates who kidnap the two and then sodomize Ving Rhames while Bruce Willis escapes. And Bruce Willis, it's just it's a perfect Tarantino-ism where he's about to leave the store and you hear the horrifying things happening to Ving Rhames in the basement while Bruce Willis's hand is on the door and there's a Confederate flag in the background, and Bruce Willis's character is like, nah, I gotta save him from this fate. Even my worst enemy who wants to kill me should not be subjected to this.
And then so he's looking through the pawn shop, contemplating should he bring a lead pipe down? Should he look for a gun? And then he just spies a katana and just goes, yeah, that's the thing I'm gonna use. So he grabs a katana and goes into the basement.
And murders the one hillbilly, and then the other one, unfortunately, is tortured and murdered off screen by Ving Rhames.
What is Ving Rhames' quote again? Bruce Willis is like, you okay, or something like that.
I'm pretty fucking far from okay.
Yeah. And then he's like, all right. And he's like, he's standing there and we cool. And he's like, I got some, what does he say? Some hard or some pipe toting guys.
I'm going to come back here with a bunch of hard pipe hitting friends and we're going to go.
Yeah.
I ain't done with you by a damn sight. I'm going to get medieval on your ass.
Yeah.
So we cool? We cool. He's like, yeah, you lost your LA privileges. And he's like, all right. And he's like, as for this stays between you, me, and Mr. Soon to be leaving the rest of his antagonizingly short-ass life in pain, or something to that effect. Meanwhile, the guy's on the ground screaming in pain because Ving Rhames just shot him in the balls. So yeah, that scene is just perfectly encapsulates Tarantino's ability to manipulate the audience with tone, tension, and extremeness. But that's an idea that this movie plays with a lot, is vengeance and biblical vengeance. And this scene, you want them to kill, what's easier to hate than rapist Confederates?
Exactly.
What is more glorious than murdering them with a katana? And then just that idea of yeah, he's gonna torture that. It's extreme, but it gets the point across.
Yeah, as you said, this is the most Tarantino probably that we will come across. Some people would say this is him at his best. Some people would say this is not for me. This is him at his worst, which I've heard from both people. As you said, though, like he completely brings you in and is like, yeah, kill those racist rapists. Like they gotta go. They need to go now. Get rid of them. So yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. I think in terms of the realization of these characters and the dialogue and the story and the structure of the story, it's just masterwork. Um, there's some rust to the direction. I would compare it very similarly to what I said about Christopher Nolan's Memento. Um, I just think this is even more well written and more well realized than Memento, but it still has some slight oddities to the direction. I think a lot of them come from Tarantino getting over ambitious or over exuberant at times. And so there's stuff that just feels like there's so many iconic scenes in the movie that the ones that are a little less memorable feel either cheap and cheesy or just out of place, like they could have been cut.
yeah.
The self insert into the movie where he says the N word repeatedly is also I personally I love it because it shows a very specific type of humor that Tarantino's going for, and I don't think Tarantino is racist, but there is absolutely a conversation to be had that this may just be a racist film.
Right. Because the scene and him doing that is rather inexplicable.
It doesn't need to be there at all. It's hilarious. Like having the director of the movie appear just in the story just for the shit of saying the N-word. Like that's all the reason he's there. Anybody could have played it.
There's zero reason why he's in there. Just a guy who's providing them coffee and a place for them to switch out their car.
He's also not good at acting. Like
No,
he shouldn't be in the movie. He's not good at.
no, but it's also even funnier because when he's delivering the lines, you almost backtrack from the characters who are saying the lines that he wrote specifically, and you go, wait, this is the fucking dude who's coming up with all this bullshit. And all of a sudden he's on screen chugging coffee, just saying the N-word, and you're like, whoa, buddy, what's going on here?
Yeah, yeah,
And then Mr. Wolf shows up.
right. Oh, you bring the wolf? That's shit. That's all you had to say. Yeah, this if it's not obvious, I've got this Sam Jackson from The Hateful Eight as my background here. He steals the movie completely. He is by far the most iconic of it, and would go on to be Tarantino's best collaborator over the years, just in terms of roles of just the sharpest character, like the character who always knows what's happening, seemingly the best. The one who's able to outwit others, outshoot others, and yeah, profanity laden experiences, but
He is infinitely requotable in this role in particular, both from the writing that was provided to him and his delivery is unparalleled.
yeah, when he gets those big eyes, right, furious anger.
Do I look like a bitch? Is it that, or does he say, does he look
Does
like
he
a,
look like a yeah?
does he look
Oh yeah,
like a bitch?
yeah. So this movie is very endlessly quotable. I can understand people not liking it if you have something against profanity, if you have something against violence. Obviously,
Right.
the raping is a lot. I'm sure that's not that can turn a lot of people off. We'll still get into the Weinstein stuff because it's all related in some way to the fact that this is again this is a Miramax film. Yeah, executive produced by Harvey Weinstein. But yeah, I think that about covers Pulp Fiction.
Definitely.
You're
Definitely.
ready to move on.
Yeah, I've seen it like probably 5 or 6 times, and I'll probably continue watching it every few years. It's enjoyable. It's a good late night movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
The
it's just
next
hilarious, crazy.
next is Jackie Brown, 1997. So we have Pam Grier, Samuel L. Jackson, Robert Forster, Robert De Niro as
Michael
well.
Keaton, Bridget Fonda.
Right, Michael Keaton. Oh my God. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
This one I have seen, but am like far less familiar with. I think I've only seen it once or twice.
Gotcha.
Shout out to Joel
Yeah.
Canner for turning me on to this movie, actually, because I had never heard of it in college, and he was like, "No, we gotta watch this." Yeah.
Yeah, so if Reservoir Dogs is like Tarantino's take on the heist, a heist film where he removes the heist, but you still get all the juicy bits of a heist film. So like the team being assembled, switch ups, backstabbing, shootouts. Um, I would say Pulp Fiction is sort of Tarantino's own genre, where like time is irrelevant and space is traversed in a very strange way. Um, but all the characters' paths and stories intersect. Like now, that's very common because that structure of Pulp Fiction has been tried endlessly to lesser effect. Um, but just in terms of genre, this movie is like a blaxploitation movie, or at least a blaxploitation crime thriller. So it has a lot of elements of a subgenre that is far less popular, and I kind of see that as one of the main reasons why this is not his most popular movie. Like it's I think one of his least popular in terms of like a large following that it still has today.
It definitely
Um,
is.
it's a little oddly paced too. Um, for Tarantino, it's one of his more subtle movies. Um, like it's kind of like a hangout movie. Like there's just a lot of parts where people are just sort of hanging out together. Like people are drinking, chilling. Um, but it's done in his way where they're all killers or drug smugglers or cops.
Yeah. I also wanted to comment and say that I really appreciate the names of the characters in the movies. Like from the last movie, like Jules,
Yeah,
Vincent
Jules
Vega,
Winfield, Vincent Vega,
Honey Bunny,
Mr. Wolf, Honey Bunny,
Marcellus.
Marcellus Wallace,
Then in this movie you
Butch,
have Max Cherry, you have Jackie Brown, Mark Dargis, Louis Gara, like
Ordell Robbie. That's Samuel Jackson's name. Ordell Robbie.
yeah, like they're both ridiculous names, but also they match LA. Like they match that sort of like who you would run into in LA and just be like, Max Cherry, that can't be a person. You're like, oh, nope, there's just Bob Cherry. Yep, Bob Cherrywood. Like
Detective Mark Dargis.
that, yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Beaumont Livingston.
This movie also, now that I think about it, it reminds me a lot of Inherent Vice in some ways. Possibly because of the location, but also like there are a number of scenes of people hanging out. There's like marijuana, people drinking, and then all of a sudden just weird stuff happens between them, or like and we've talked about this before where you end up in a place and you're like, why are we here? What are these people doing and why are they talking to each other? Why is this in the movie? And then eventually it does make sense. Or it might make more sense if you watch it again. But yeah, I like what you said about this as it being one of his more subtle, if not the subtlest movie. I would definitely say it's his subtlest movie, which is probably why it's not as popular as it is.
Well, it helps that the like Samuel Jackson's character is still quite over the top at times, but he's less bombastic as the villain in this movie. And the same is true of Robert De Niro's character, who's also a villain. They're both more muted. They have a sort of mundaneness to them. At least Robert De Niro's character does. Samuel Jackson's character is once again smart. Like, he's supposed to kind of be one of the smarter characters in the movie. And in being that way, he does ultimately get, outsmarted. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. He's less of a larger than life character. Like, the stuff he's doing is relative to some of the villains that will come, or the portrayal of Marcellus Wallace in Pulp Fiction, which is just like a gangster that is shadowy and unreal, who then becomes real. But
yeah, we didn't mention the iconic shot behind the car of them opening the trunk, or
yes.
or the shot of opening the briefcase and you don't see what's in it, but there's a light on the character's face and they kind of get like a little gleam in their eye.
Yeah. So Tarantino played around with the MacGuffin and had a MacGuffin that is never stated what it is. So it could just be a suitcase full of money or diamonds. Jules Winfield says it's his boss's dirty laundry. The most fun theories I've read are either meta-narrative theories, where it's like the box contains the plot, and that's why the plot is all over the place, because the box is moving around weirdly. Or the other theory is that it contains Marcellus Wallace's soul, and he needs it back. And that's why he's vulnerable, because he's actually like some kind of superpowered entity that is like a demon.
Mm-hmm.
That one's way more out there, and there's no evidence for it. It is just diamonds, like that is just what's in the case,
or gold bars.
Right. Yeah. But anybody that the whole point of it was like, why answer this mystery? This is one of those parts of a movie that doesn't need to be answered.
Mm-hmm.
And in talking with other people, they might have a different idea of what was actually in the thing. So, give some subjectivity to a movie. But yeah, back to Jackie Brown. So this one, in terms of revitalizing people's careers, this is a big one for Pam Grier, who had completely disappeared. She grew famous from being in blaxploitation films in the 70s, like Kofi and Foxy Brown. And Tarantino loves blaxploitation, obviously. And so he always thought she was underutilized, misutilized, and then disappeared from Hollywood. So he threw her in, and it once again helped. I think she was nominated. No, Robert Forster was nominated for an Oscar. So it helped revitalize his career as well. But it did make Pam Grier slightly relevant again. But yeah, what do you think of this one? Because I too have only seen this once, or twice, but I never really wanted to see it again.
I'll probably watch it again with Anna because she hasn't seen it. Yeah, it's a good. Sorry, it's a good crime thriller. It's an enjoyable movie. It seems to be missing. I don't know if it's a punch or something. Like, it has some of his like signature stuff in it, and I don't necessarily think it needs to be more Tarantino, but it feels like it's missing like one or two kind of punches. But maybe that's the beauty of the movie, is in its subtlety. Yeah. There are like two scenes that I remember kind of sneaking up on you, which is good and cool to watch. No, I don't really have too much more to say about it, other than like, if you like Tarantino and you haven't seen this, I would definitely recommend watching it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's still fun and satisfying.
I like it more than some of the other ones, which is actually like a pretty hot take, which like his next movie, Kill Bill Volume 1, but I also haven't seen Volume 2, so take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah, you watched half a movie and we're not a fan, which
Exactly. My opinion doesn't matter on the subject because I'm only half informed.
yeah. So this is I mean it's counting it as one movie's a lot because part 1 is like an hour 50 minutes and part 2 is like 2 hours 20 minutes, so together it's you know, one very long movie that doesn't need to be that long. It Yeah, the plot is again non-linear and all over the place. There's flashbacks, there's crazy yeah, all kinds of shit, but basically the whole point is that Uma Thurman plays an unnamed protagonist who is on a warpath to kill her ex-boyfriend slash husband, Bill. Hence the name, Kill Bill.
Yeah, the first one came out in 2003. The second came out in 2004. Did they shoot them just like all together, I assume?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to kick you off the path of the story.
No, so it was always meant to be one like 3.5 hour movie, and Harvey Weinstein was like, this should be 2 movies. And oddly enough, Weinstein, like the thing Weinstein was known for outside of the horrible things he did, was he was known for being able to pressure directors to take all of his advice. And Quentin Tarantino is the one person he worked with who never seemed to back down from arguments with him. So Tarantino would always make the movie he wanted to make. Ironically enough, on this one issue, Weinstein was right, and Tarantino listened to him, and we got 2 movies. Each has its strengths, I think, and its weaknesses. Like Volume 1's ending is very strong, but it kind of meanders a bit to get there. It's a revenge movie. Like, this lady's warpath is killing a bunch of people who tried to kill her at her own wedding when she was pregnant. So she has good reason for vengeance. So it starts with like she goes after, what are they, the Deadly Vipers?
Yes.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm not a big fan of part 1. I think the ending is excellent. It's some of the best like martial arts sword fighting stuff ever put to the screen. How they get there is a bit all over the place. Yeah, I don't know how you want to proceed forward.
Well, I can't
Since you
comment
haven't
on the
seen,
second part. Yeah.
Yeah, part 2 I think is significantly better. It has more flashbacks of like the traditional, like Uma Thurman training to become a master martial artist and swordsman. There's all this funny stuff where she learns how to do like a death punch, where she can punch someone from a foot away and it kills them instantly. The second one has more. There's like car crashes and she's buried alive, and there's fights with snakes and a bunch of betrayal. I don't really like the side plots or the subplots very much. I really like the ending of the second movie too. You'll never guess what happens.
I can only imagine.
What's the name? Oh, Kill Bill was the name of the
Lick
film.
Bill. She licks
Right.
him.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll move on past this one. This is one of those ones where it highlights the best and worst parts of Tarantino as a director. Um,
Kill Bill or his
these
next
move
movie?
Kill Bill.
Okay.
I mean these were like hugely successful films, and they're still beloved today. Um, their ability to replicate samurai movies, so many elements still of spaghetti westerns. There's still some elements of blaxploitation films. Um, that stuff comes through really well, but it's Tarantino's overuse of long dialogue scenes and more contrived action-based set pieces, like stuff on motorcycles and cars, um, is not that interesting to me. Like I said, I really like the long sword fight where she fights 88 people, and I
Yes.
like the fight she has at the end of the second movie with Bill. And the fight she has with Lucy Liu then is also um, excellent. Um, but yeah, outside of that, I don't know. He could have used some help writing this thing and certainly editing it down.
Yeah. Like I said, I actually like Jackie Brown more than this, but I've only seen half of it, so it doesn't really matter. So, um, moving on to Death Proof, which came out in 2007. As long as you were finished with Kill Bill.
Yeah, I not the biggest fan of it. It does what it's supposed to do well enough, but yeah.
2007. This one is a double part of a double feature, right?
Mm-hmm. Grindhouse double feature. It's
Directed
Robert
by
Rodriguez's superior film Planet Terror.
yeah, yeah. So this and that other one make up Grindhouse.
Yes, so it was
Got it.
released as a double feature, meant to be kind of like a midnight movie where crazy exploitation stuff would play at Grindhouse cinemas.
Specifically, sexploitation in the cases of both of these movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll get into yeah, well, that's Harvey Weinstein again is rearing his ugly head here, getting harder not to talk about.
True, true. Yeah, I didn't really think about that. I'm pretty sure I saw Death Proof, but I was younger and was definitely not thinking about it from like a film standpoint. Um, Before we get into this, actually, we're just gonna take a tea break, so we will be right back. Let's pause here. Yeah, I stopped the recording.
Oh, cool.
You were recording the video, right?
What?
You were recording video, right?
Yeah, on Skype.
Okay, cool.
Did you stop that one?
What one? The video? No, I stopped.